the journey starts. There is hope in the stillness. There is solace in our friends and in the love that grows between us. This is where the isolation ends. Come full circle in a moment. Hold no shame in what you feel. This old world will keep on turning, and our broken hearts will heal. When the rain falls around you like your solitary tear, in the love that flows between us, know that thunder holds no fear. In the struggle you hold sacred, when the arrows pierce you through, in the love that flows between us, may your courage be renewed. Silence, there is promise in each day, and in the love that holds between us, may we always find our way. Come full circle in a moment. Hold no shame in what you feel. This old world will keep on turning, and our broken hearts will heal. There's a flame in the darkness, burning deep within our hearts, in the love that grows between us. This is where the journey starts. There is hope in the stillness. There is solace in our friends and in the love that holds between us. The sacred journey never ends. Yes, in the love that holds between us, sacred journey.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Unitarian Church of Los Alamos. I am the Reverend John Cullinan, your minister here. And I'm thrilled to be joined once again by Mr. Joe Jencks with his music and message this morning. It's been not that long since we've seen him last, but a while since we've seen you up here in worship. So welcome and thank you so much for bringing yourself out here. As Unitarian Universalists, we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all people and gather together in a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are at this moment, watching from home or here in the sanctuary, wherever you are on your life's journey, you are welcome to be a part of this community. I want to extend a special welcome this morning to any visitors or first-time guests we have among us. I would love to meet you after the service in our coffee hour in the fellowship hall, introduce myself, and answer any questions you might have about our community here. If you're a new parent among us, I encourage you to have a conversation with Reverend Tina Dio here in the front row, our Director of Lifespan Religious Education, and she can tell you all about our programs here for children and youth and for adults as well. If you are coming back to us after a long break away, if you are coming back to the sanctuary after that long COVID break and you're feeling comfortable again, we are so happy you are with us once more and we can see your face. Welcome back. And now let us prepare ourselves for worship this morning. Feel yourself grounded. Take a deep breath in and out. And let us begin.
I try and save my OCD for moments that really matter. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. If you're inclined to want to stand and sing, you are most welcome to. No obligation, though. Shall not be moved. Hand in hand together, we shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. The union is beside us, we shall not be moved. The union is beside us, we shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. We're marching for our freedom, we shall not be moved. We're marching for our freedom, we shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. We're fighting for our families, we shall not be moved. We're fighting for our families, we shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. We're working for equality, we shall not be moved. We're working for equality, we shall not be moved. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we shall not be moved. We shall not. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We shall not be moved.
Affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve life in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. Thus do we covenant with each and with all. Please be seated. A candle has been lit this morning in celebration of the life of Sharon Libby, Kyle Butler Moore's aunt, who died last week, and for Frank Libby as he carries on without his wife of many years. For all our joys, all our sorrows, whether we share them aloud with one another or we hold them close and quiet in our hearts, let us be together now in a moment of silence. Please join with me now in a spirit of prayer and reflection. Eternal and beloved, gracious source of all life and all love, we come together this morning grateful for this time out of time, which we have set apart so that we might become more fully present to ourselves, to each other, to that which we call holy. May our joys be celebrated together, our wounds be healed together, our hearts be opened together. We live right now in unquiet times, with the noise and the cacophony of politics, rising poverty, and those who grasp for prideful power. We live amidst the noise of violence and the promise of violence. We live amidst the noise of mistrust and misinformation and misunderstanding. In all of this, our fragile hearts feel the chaos and begin to beat erratically to the time of that noise and cacophony. And in times like this, and in noise like this, it is hard to know where to begin. It is hard to know what to do first. And so it might seem easy to succumb to the temptation in these moments, to close our ears to the noise, close our hearts to the world around us just to protect ourselves from the chaos. With all of this spirit of life and love, give us a chance to let ourselves pause for a moment in your quiet stillness, so that we might have the opportunity to find the one thing amidst all of the chaos and the noise and uncertainty, the one thing that we can say yes to, the one thing our tired, aching hearts can hold on to, so that we might find the strength to shelter someone or comfort, to heal someone or lift them up. Let us pause and take a moment to find the one thing that keeps our hearts open, finds us willing with our whole heart to love the stranger, to invite someone in, to welcome them in their wholeness, to connect to them, to connect to the community around us, to find our ways to do justice and love mercy and walk humbly with you. All this we pray in the names of those known and unknown, present and absent, remembered and forgotten, in the names of all the helpers of humankind. Amen. And if the young and the young at heart would like to join me at the front of the sanctuary, I have a story this morning. This is clippin' weird. Well, good morning, children of all ages. Good morning. My friend Joe is going to talk to us about the life of Martin Luther King today. And we thought, as a time for all ages, we would talk about somebody else from the civil rights movement. My story today is about Rosa Parks. How many have heard that name before? And how many know what she is famous for having done? For not giving up her seat to a white person on the bus. And for most of the country, that's the story we know, right? Rosa Parks was tired at the end of a long day's work, and the segregation laws said she had to move to the back of the bus if there was a white person who needed to sit in the front. And that day, she refused. And then a whole bus boycott started. But that's not the whole story. See, Rosa had been working for civil rights for years before that one moment in 1956. She had been part of the NAACP. She was organizing with friends and allies. They were working to build justice in Montgomery, Alabama, where she lived. But the work was long and hard and exhausting. And after a while, Rosa started to lose hope a little bit. She wasn't sure what they could do next, what she could do next in order to continue fighting for her rights and the rights of her fellow Black people in Montgomery. And just when she was about to give up all hope, one of her friends said to her, "Rosa, you know what you need to do? You need to go back to school." This was a bit of a surprising answer. She'd been to school. But they were asking her to go to a special school, to leave Alabama and go to Tennessee up into the mountains and go to a place called the Highlander Folk School, which had been established during the Great Depression to continue to teach people, especially people in poverty in the mountains, the skills they needed to survive in poverty and the skills they needed to know how to speak up for their rights and for their needs. And so that's where Rosa Parks found herself in 1955. She went to take a workshop called Desegregation, how to implement the new Supreme Court decision. And the new Supreme Court decision at that time was Brown versus the Board of Education and the work to reintegrate the schools, which was not happening immediately at all. So she went to learn from another Black woman, a leader at the Highlander Folk School, which was the only integrated school in the South at that time. Septima Clark was the teacher, and she had been an educator in the South as well until she had lost her job because she too was involved in the civil rights movement. But instead of giving up, she found her way to the folk school, and soon she was hired to be faculty, and pretty soon she was one of the top leaders of the school along with white men who were running it. She was an equal, truly, in this environment. And Rosa learned all about desegregation and how to act upon it and how to make things come about, but she also learned from the life of Septima Clark, who she was learning from, how she didn't give up when she lost her job, when everything was taken from her for working for civil rights. How she found a way to keep teaching, and in the process found herself to be equal to others in the school, a leader. And so Rosa went home to Montgomery, and then they started talking about what they could do next. Now, many years earlier, Rosa had a run-in with a bus driver already, who kicked her off the bus when she tried to enter through the whites-only door after trying to register to vote. She knew the buses were an issue. It was something people could rally around, and so they started to plan. And then one day in 1956, the day had come. She got on the bus, tired after her long day working as a seamstress, and lo and behold, she wound up on the bus of the same bus driver who had kicked her off the bus all those years before, who told her she needed to move to the back. And then she refused. Now, sometimes the stories in history do just spring up out of nowhere, out of just a confluence of events. But sometimes, and especially in our work for justice, It takes a lot more planning. It takes knowing who your friends and your allies are, knowing who the people who have the experience are, taking the time to listen and learn and plan. And it's in the planning that our justice work begins. And that's my story this morning. You may head back to the seat or keep playing with your string there, and we'll move on with the service.
Thank you, Reverend John. Rick, can we turn this microphone up just a little bit? I really can't hear myself in the sanctuary here. I need just a little bit more on this mic here. Thank you.
Lay down your weapons, love has you surrounded. There is no easy way out. Lay down your shield, let your heart break just a little. Let love remove all doubt. You go through the world, everybody's sweetheart, keeping up a front that wears you down. But in a quiet moment, the truth comes out. Some days you feel like you're about to drown. So lay down your weapons, love has you surrounded. There is no easy way out. Lay down your shield and let your heart break just a little. Let love remove all doubt. And there is no reason to play this charade. You can be loved for who you are. And for every troubled thought that crosses your mind, please know that you are someone else's shining star. And lay down your weapons, love has you surrounded. There is no easy way out. Lay down your shield, let your heart break just a little. Let love remove all doubt. What do you need? By what measure would you know that you are more than what you achieve? When you look in the mirror, is it possible to see that you are enough? So let it breathe. And lay down your weapons, love has you surrounded. There is no easy way out. Lay down your shield, let your heart break just a little. Let love remove all doubt. Lay down your shield, let your heart break just a little. Let love remove all doubt.
Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Now, there is a final reason, I think, that Jesus says, love your enemies. It is this, that love has within it a redemptive power. And there is a power there that eventually transforms individuals. Just keep being friendly to that person. Just keep loving them, and they can't stand it too long. Oh, they react in many ways in the beginning. They react with guilt feelings, and sometimes they'll hate you a little more at that transition period. But just keep loving them. And by the power of your love, they will break down under the load. That's love, you see. It is redemptive. And this is why Jesus says, love. There's something about love that builds up and is creative. There is something about hate that tears down and is destructive. So love your enemies. It is my distinct pleasure to be back here with you in Los Alamos, in this sanctuary, in this beautiful place with this wonderful congregation. This is the third time I've had the privilege of being here, both for worship and for a concert. And it is always a privilege as an itinerant lay minister to have the privilege of sharing thoughts and ideas, both in song and word with you. And thank you, Reverend John, for being willing to share the pulpit today. I think a lot of us have the notion that King came into the world with a prophetic voice. I have been to the mountaintop. He came in as a baby, and he grew into be a little boy with a huge heart and with the same hopes and dreams that every human being has. But when he was 6 years old, something happened that shattered that huge and tender heart. He lived in the parsonage for the church that his father served, and he sang even at that age in the church choir. He was already getting in trouble in Sunday school because he was asking questions that were inconvenient for his Sunday school teachers, already deconstructing the narrative within Christian and Hebrew scripture, and seeing at that age, the early tender years, he was seeing the inconsistencies if one tries to engage in literal interpretation of Scripture. But all was well in the neighborhood, and his best friend lived across the street upstairs from a butcher shop that the family owned. His best friend was white, and they would roam all over the neighborhood together in a mixed-race, working-class neighborhood. But then it came time for the boys to go to school, and they were sent to separate, segregated schools. And within a matter of weeks, King's best friend would no longer be friends with him, and the younger brother wouldn't be friends with him either, and he wasn't even in school yet. But this boy across the street was being indoctrinated with such a specific form of institutionalized racism that within a matter of weeks, he would not be Martin's friend anymore. And Martin, for his part, he went to his father, and I paraphrase now. I lifted this out of an autobiography from King, and I don't have the exact phrasing, but the gist of what he said to his father, what he remembered saying to his father, was that he didn't know what it was in the world that allowed for such brokenness to exist and to go unchallenged. But he wanted to spend his life trying to fix whatever was so broken that all of this was okay. An extraordinary commitment from a young person, but a young person with a broken heart. And we see in there the seeds of what becomes one of his most famous speeches. And I'm pleased as a writer, as a songwriter, to know that King was prototyping his own ideas in lots of different iterations. You'll recognize a fair portion of this, but a few years before the more famous speech, he was sharing these ideas at an AFL-CIO convention. He says, "I look forward confidently to the day when all who work for a living will be one with no thought to their separateness as Negroes, Jews, Italians, Irish, or any other distinctions. This will be the day when we bring into full realization the American dream, a dream yet unfulfilled, a dream of equality and opportunity, of privilege and property widely distributed, a dream of a land where men will not take necessities from the many to give luxuries to the few, a dream of a land where men will not argue that the color of a man's skin determines the content of his character, a dream of a nation where all our gifts and resources are held not for ourselves alone, but as instruments of service for the rest of humanity. The dream of a country where everyone will respect the dignity and worth of the human personality. That is the dream. And he was working on this more than 2 years before he gave the I Have a Dream speech on the National Mall. It pleases me to know that someone that I admire and respect was prototyping his ideas as well, and tweaking them and changing them as he learned more and as he found the path toward efficacy. We find ourselves, as Reverend John suggested, in very challenging times. Sometimes that challenge is in our own heart, in our families, in our spiritual communities, in our town, in our state, in our nation, in the world. The challenges exist around us, and I think part of how we find serenity inside of that is within our commitment to process. Gerald Torres is a wonderful environmental rights lawyer, an environmental rights activist, an indigenous man who teaches presently at Cornell in Ithaca. But I got to hear him speak last year, and he was talking about how do we make change on a big scale in the environmental movements? How do we make change in the face of global climate affectedness, you know? And he said, envision the world as you want it to be, and then engage in a discipline of hope as you reach for your goals. A discipline of hope. I have a dear friend and artist colleague in the Twin Cities, and I shared that with him, and he had some other thoughts about this. He said, I think commitment is even more important than hope. Of the two, hope or commitment, I think commitment is the greater of them. Hope can fail, but commitment will carry you through those times until you find hope again. Ricardo Levins Morales. I look at somebody like King, I look at somebody like Rosa Parks, C.T. Vivian, Baird Rustin, Bernice Johnson Regan, to name just a few. And I see people who walked bipedal on hope and commitment, hope and commitment. And as we look at how we do things in the world, I want to introduce a notion to you that I have been playing with for a while, prototyping, just as King prototyped his ideas about I Have a Dream. Because I think there is a process that we can follow to challenge, this is a phrase that I lifted from King, the toxicity of nostalgia, where we get so stuck in the way that we have always done a thing that it becomes an impediment to growth. And this is just an amalgamation of thoughts that I've had working in the labor movement, working in the civil rights movement, working in environmental movements. But I think it applies to our personal process as well. What do you need? That matters. Being able to ask that question, what do you need? What does your community need? What is your evidence that this is what the community needs? Sometimes we have a need and we project it onto the community without evidence that that is other people's needs. But it's really important to recognize that we get to have needs in community, in family systems, in congregations, in workplace. But it's also important to recognize that other people do as well. And so if we're going to presume that something is a communal need, then we need to figure out how we arrived at that conclusion. Then we need to ask ourselves, how can you uniquely meet that need, parenthetically for yourself, for others? And then ask, is there someone in the community better suited to meet that need than you? This is a bit of a reality check to make sure that our ego is not presuming that we are the person that should be in leadership just because we have a capacity. Sometimes cultivating and nurturing leadership in others is the place where we will gain the most. So, is there someone in community better suited to meet that need than you? If so, how can you support that leadership? What can you do to help train a person, help them prototype their leadership skills so that they can be effective in service to the community? And 7, how will you know when your goals have been met? We get very good at setting plans and agendas and having meetings and having thoughts and strategies, and sometimes I think we don't always understand how to measure whether or not the goals have been met. And sometimes we're afraid to back out and say, wow, we were headed in this direction, but clearly, based on the rubric that we came up with on defining our needs and the needs of community, we're not meeting those needs. So let's take a few steps back. Let's go back to that last crossroads and take a fork in a different direction. We have to risk making mistakes as we envision the bigger picture of community. Coretta Scott King said, like life, racial understanding is not something that we find, but something we must create. And so the ability of Negroes and whites to work together, to understand each other, will not be found ready-made. It must be created by the fact of contact. When I was in kindergarten, I had a music teacher, Dorothy Page Turner, an extraordinary woman. She was the child of tenant farmers in Arkansas. In the early 1960s, mid-1960s, she wanted to go to school, and she was the first person anywhere in her family to pursue a degree beyond high school. She went to college in Little Rock, and she was trying to think about what she could most give the civil rights movement and what she could give to humanity. And she decided to become a music teacher because she believed that she could take the magical power of music and place it in the hands of her students. If she could help young people embrace this tool of transformation, not just political transformation or societal transformation, the transformation of our own hearts, that place that King invites us into when he talks about the power of love and the destructive power of hate, and why we need to train ourselves to love. She knew that music had the power to train young minds in the direction of loving. And she devoted her life. She still does kinder music at nearly 80 years old. She's a jazz singer and still sings out and has an ensemble. An extraordinary human being. She was at my school until I was in 2nd grade, but we would sing all the songs of the civil rights movement. We shall overcome and wade in the water. We shall not be moved. If you miss me at the back of the bus, if you miss me at the back of the bus, come on up to the front of the bus. I'll be riding up there. We would sing these in all school concerts in a very integrated and mixed race school. And just imagine, if you will, in Rockford, Illinois in 1977, a black music director teaching all of these songs to these students and having them sing in the auditorium. She was a courageous radical. She was pushing boundaries. And she did it in an affable way because she was leading with love every time. When I was in my teens, she approached my mother and asked permission to invite me into a project, and my mother said, well, that's really up to him, but thanks for asking. And she invited me to become the only white member of a black theater ensemble. I was in the ensemble for 5 years, and I can tell you what Coretta Scott King was talking about, that the integration and the understanding we are seeking will not be found ready-made. It must be created. We must create the spaces in which we can get to know our neighbors, get to know those who are different from us. Sometimes that difference is not visible on the outside, but the difference is real. Sometimes that difference has to do with orientation or identity. Sometimes it has to do with gender or generation. Sometimes it has to do with more visible things like race. But we create the spaces where we can build the relationships. And from those legitimate relationships and friendships, trust and understanding begins to form. That was my experience in the Black Theater Ensemble and throughout high school. At one point, I was asked to play the role of a slave auctioneer. It was one of the most difficult things I ever had to do as a performer, to stand on a soapbox, basically, and to sell human beings, to go through the act of selling human beings. The show was called Freedom Journey. And I was exposed in that show to many things that were not in the history books that I was reading in high school. The writings of Frederick Douglass and Sojourner Truth, the writings of Black thinkers and philosophers from many generations. And after one particularly challenging rehearsal, I sat down on the edge of the stage, about as high as this in a black box theater, about the size of this room, and I began to weep. The humanity of that moment was more than my 15-year-old heart could hold, and it came leaking out of my eyes. And Dorothy Page Turner, my wonderful mentor and teacher, walked up to me, and she placed one hand over my heart and one hand over my shoulder. And when she saw I was looking her straight in the eye, she said, "No one here is confused about who you are. We have asked you to do a difficult thing so that we can tell a story that must be told. But nobody here is confused about who you are." I think about the younger people that I know in the LGBTQ community. I think about people of color everywhere in our nation. I think about elders who are dismissed. I think about people who are marginalized in so many ways, sometimes violently, in our society. Those who struggle with mental illness and end up in the penal system, end up being arrested or incarcerated and not being treated for mental illness, but simply being treated as a criminal. And I have to ask myself, what would happen if the officer, if the social worker, if the person who was right there, what would happen if each one of us in the line at a grocery store could turn around and look somebody in the eye and say, "Nobody here is confused about who you are. We see you. We see the depth of your humanity." I wonder how that would change the narrative in our society if that was what we led with in conflict. If that is how we greeted someone who was struggling. We just held space around them, gave them permission to have their feelings, and reminded them that they are witnessed and they are seen. You may say that I'm a dreamer, but I am not the only one. Yeah, I think about that. I worked security at the Kerrville Folk Festival for a while. We're called peacekeepers. Early in my career, I wanted to spend time in Texas at this 19-day festival, and I couldn't afford it. And so I would go volunteer. And Vern Crawford, the man who was training all of the new peacekeepers, I refer to him as a Texas leprechaun. He's about that tall, has a long white beard and tiny little steel-rimmed glasses. He does Santa Claus gigs in the winter as well. But he says to me in this beautiful sing-song Texas accent, he says, "Now, Joe, now don't think of yourself as security. Think of yourself as proactive hospitality." And I think, what would happen if each one of us in some area of our lives took responsibility for proactive hospitality? I think that's what King is inviting us to do in society, in our organizations, in our churches, in our families, in our own hearts. What does it mean to love radically, to engage in radical, proactive hospitality that begins to solve problems before they become more serious problems? That's the invitation of the 7 steps that I talked about. What do you need? What does community need? What is your evidence that this is what community needs? Is there a unique way that you are suited to meet that need? Is there someone else around you that may be more suited to meet that need? If so, how do you support and develop their leadership? And how will you know when your goals have been met? It's a very discernible process at each step, but it requires continuing to go back and think about, are we solving this? Are we meeting this need? Who has now joined our community that is best suited to meet this need? It is a process always in evolution. But I think it's a way that we can face change, ongoing change, transition, movement, big life events. We can keep reevaluating what we are needing to do, what those around us need, and how we meet those needs. And that is how the civil rights movement pushed so many things forward, because there was a constant reevaluation, time and time again, to help understand what the needs were and how to meet them, and whose leadership to support and develop. How to get Rosa Parks to the Highlander School so that she could be trained in practices of nonviolent resistance and engage logically and in a calculated way in activities of civil disobedience. But it wasn't an accident. It wasn't just one woman on a bus. It wasn't just one man crossing a bridge. It was a planned action. And there is power in that, because it means we too are empowered to plan actions, to have an impact, to try and try again. It took Mohandas Gandhi the better part of 35 years to get to a place where he had organized the most pivotal event in the work for independence and home rule in India, and that was the Salt March in 1930. He finally found the issue that would franchise the Dalits, the untouchables, more than 50% of the subcontinent's population. He found the thing that could franchise them into believing that home rule could bring something better to India. Sometimes the dream is insurmountable if we try and take it one piece as a whole. If we break it down into smaller pieces, we can achieve extraordinary things. And so I offer to you that you can achieve extraordinary things. But the achievement is not the measure of efficacy. It's the integrity of process that helps guide the way. And that integrity of process is seen in so many places in the civil rights movement. If you are not familiar with the movement, I encourage you to start with some of the books that Beacon Press has released that are the writings of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and other leaders of the civil rights movement, and learn some of these stories, because they are so hopeful and so empowering, and I feel like we need that so deeply right now in the world. This song from Holly Near, some of you know her work. I've been privileged to work with her many times in my life. She has been a mentor and friend to me. I am open and I am willing to be hopeless, would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before
to the light of change. There is hurting in my family. There is sorrow in my town. There is sadness in the nation. There is wailing the whole world round. I am open and I am willing, and I am willing to be hopeless. To be hopeless would seem so strange, would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change. May the children see more clearly. May the elders be more wise. May the winds of change caress us, even though it burns our eyes. I am open, I am open, and I am willing to be hopeless. It seems so strange, it dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change. Give me a mighty yoke to hold my confusion. Give me a desert to hold my fears. Give me a sunset to hold my wonder. Give me an ocean to hold my tears. I am open and I am willing to be hopeless. It seems so strange, it dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change. So lift me up to the light of change.
This is a song that I wrote after reading one of those autobiographies of King. It's called Martin.
January 15th, 1929, born in the city of Atlanta. Just another preacher's kid singing in the choir. This kid had a vision, reach for something higher. 6 years old when segregation put him in his place. Started school and lost his childhood friends. Questioning the order of society and faith. Many deeper truths which one cannot escape. Martin, oh Martin Luther King, keep holding on to what you know is true. Living out the teaching, continuing to sing. Martin, oh Martin Luther King. Booker T. Washington High School was the place. He began to raise his voice on poverty and race. Headed off to Morehouse, the 15-year-old sage. dignity beyond his youthful age. Martin, oh Martin Luther King, keep speaking up for what you know is true. Living out the teachings, continuing to sing. Martin, oh Martin Luther King. Studying the sacred word challenged him to grow. He headed for Montgomery toward a fate he could not know. City buses, boycotts, peaceful marches in the street. A bomb thrown through a window, crowd of thorns laid at his feet. Albany to Birmingham, St. Augustine to Selma, Boston, New York City, Chicago and D.C., carrying the burden and the banner of equality till 1968, April 4th, Memphis, Tennessee. Martin, oh Martin Luther King, we will speak for what we know is true. Living out your teachings, continuing to sing. Martin, oh Martin Luther King, living out your teachings, continuing to sing. Martin, oh Martin Luther King, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King.
One of the great liabilities of history is that all too many people fail to remain awake through great periods of social change. Every society has its protectors of the status quo and its fraternities of the indifferent, who are notorious for sleeping through revolutions. Today, our very survival depends upon our ability to stay awake, to adjust to new ideas, to remain vigilant, and to face the challenge of change. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
As we prepare to return to our everyday lives, it is time to give something of the gifts of this community back to the larger community we are part of. It is time for our offering. During the month of January, all cash and undesignated funds that we receive on Sundays will be given to our friends at the Espanola Pathway Shelter in support of their work on behalf of the homeless and indigent in northern New Mexico. You may give through the basket this morning or use the QR code on your mobile device to use the Givelify app to make your donation. The offering will now be accepted. May what you give bring you joy and a deeper relationship with this community.
And you're invited to sing this with us.
Namaste.
Just a few announcements before we wind up here. If you've enjoyed listening to Joe this morning, come back at 4 p.m. this afternoon for a full concert. $20 at the door. Most of that will go to support us, or a good chunk of it will. February 1st, we'll be having a climate advocacy workshop that is being led by, I didn't write down in my notes who that's being led by, but we are welcoming in here. Come join us for that. Next Sunday after the service is our committee fair. Our various committees will be in the fellowship hall with tables set up and information about the various work that they do and opportunities to join and learn more. So please come and join us for that. And if you are running a committee that hasn't been keyed into this yet, we'll get to you. Okay. And finally, Adult Coming of Age is going to begin Thursday, February 8th at 7 p.m. This is a chance for grown-ups to do some of what the youth do when they go through coming of age, learn what it is to figure out what it is you actually truly and deeply believe, and get a chance to share with your friends and members of the congregation your credo statements. This is a hybrid class. You do not need to come to the classroom to take it. We will have it simultaneously on Zoom and in the room. We're trying something here. Fingers crossed we will pull it off. Sign-ups are still open. The QR code there you can use to register, but I hope you'll join us. We've got about 6 or 7 signed up already, and a couple more would be good, so we're looking forward to see you in that class. And James Carroll is at the back reminding me that he is going to start his comparative religions class after the service in here. So we're going to clear out as quick as we can. Everybody come have coffee as soon as we say amen here.
I'm used to my lungs responding differently to 7,500 feet, but the guitar seems a little fickle with the change in barometric pressures. Well, thank you so much for welcoming me here today. It really is my privilege to be here. Please rise in body or spirit and join me in a closing hymn you don't know yet, but you will soon.
Come with me on this journey. With every breath we take, keep reaching for the dawn. I know alone that I will falter. With a good friend near me, I will carry on. There is a kindness in your smile, and a gentleness within your speech. You reassure me, your love surrounds me. I know safety is at last within my reach. Will you come with me? Will you come with me on this journey? With every breath we take, keep reaching for the dawn. I know alone that I will falter. With a good friend near me, I will carry on. Well, I feel the current raging around me. Try to summon up my strength once more. I am weary on this journey, afraid I will not reach that distant shore. I cry for help, feel like I'm sinking. There is no one near me I can see, but there you are in the water with me. You take my hand and guide me graciously. Will you come with me? Will you come with me on this journey? With every breath we take, keep reaching for the dawn. I know alone It's an illusion we carry with us as we wade on through the waters of our lives, that we must be strong and hold our own here. But a helping hand will save us by and by. Will you come with me? Will you come with me on this journey? With every breath we take, keep reaching for the dawn. I know alone that I will falter. With a good friend near me, I will carry on. I know alone that I will falter. With a good friend near me, I will carry on. With a good friend near me, I will carry on. Beloved community, our worship is ended, but our service continues each and every day.